Humanity encountered the Galactic Empire and couldn't stop giggling Part 1, the day the aliens arrived. Captain Park Junho was eating instant noodles in his small office aboard the diplomatic vessel called the Olive Branch. He had been waiting for 3 years in space, hoping for contact with alien life. He had imagined this moment many times. In none of those dreams was he holding chopsticks with soup dripping down his chin. "Captain, you need to come to the bridge. Now." Lieutenant Kim Yuna's voice came through the speaker, and she sounded afraid. Junho dropped his noodles and ran. When he reached the bridge, every crew member was standing still, looking at the main screen. Junho looked too, and his heart almost stopped. Near Jupiter, where there had been empty space just hours ago, there were now ships. Not 10 ships. Not 50 ships. 400 warships, each one the size of a small moon, arranged in perfect formation like a wall of metal and death. "They appeared from nowhere," Yuna whispered. Her hands were shaking over her control panel. "Some kind of faster-than-light travel we've never seen before." Junho sat down slowly in his captain's chair. He had trained for many things, but not for this. Earth's entire military fleet was maybe 30 ships. These aliens had brought 400 just to say hello. "Are they talking to us?" he asked. "They're trying. The computer is working on translation." Yuna pressed some buttons. I think I've got it." The screen changed to show a face, if you could call it a face. The alien was tall, covered in hard black shell like a beetle, with 6 red eyes arranged in a circle on its head. Behind it, Junho could see a throne made of what looked like bones. The alien began to speak, and the translation came through in a flat computer voice. "I am the Veltrix Archon, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Hegemony of 12 stars, Crusher of the weak, Devourer of hope, He who makes stars weep, Conqueror of 2,000 worlds, Master of the void between galaxies, first of his name in the long dark, Keeper of the sacred flames of..." The title went on, and on, and on. Junho looked at Yuna. Yuna looked at Junho. The title continued for 11 full minutes. "And holder of the 77 keys of absolute dominion. You will surrender your world to me, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 rotation of your planet to decide." The message ended. Silence filled the bridge. Junho opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a sound came from Yuna's station. A small sound. A snort. Everyone turned to look at her. Yuna's face was red. Her shoulders were shaking. She put her hand over her mouth, but it was too late. The snort became a giggle. The giggle became a laugh. And then she was laughing so hard that tears ran down her face. "Lieutenant," Junho said, "control yourself. I'm sorry." Yuna gasped between laughs. "I'm so sorry. It's just he who makes stars weep. That's his name? That's really his name?" And then, despite everything, despite the 400 warships and the threat of death, Junho felt his own lips twitching. He bit his tongue, trying to stop it, but it was no use. The situation was too absurd. The alien was too serious. The title was too long. He laughed. Soon the whole bridge was laughing. The communications officer, the navigator, even the serious old weapons officer who never smiled was holding his stomach and making strange choking sounds. Nobody noticed that the transmission was still open. Nobody noticed that the Veltrix Archon was watching. When Junho finally stopped laughing and wiped his eyes, he saw the Archon's face on the screen. 6 red eyes, all staring. The alien had not moved, had not blinked. For the first time in perhaps 800 years. Someone had laughed at him. The silence was terrible. Then Ambassador Lee Taiho walked onto the bridge. Lee Taiho was Earth's chosen representative for first contact. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes. Before becoming a diplomat, he had been a comedian. Not a very good one, but he understood timing. He understood how to read a room. He looked at the screen. He looked at the frozen Archon. He understood immediately what had happened, without missing a beat. Tai-Ho walked to the center of the bridge, bowed politely to the screen, and spoke. "Your Magnificence," he said, his voice calm and respectful. "Please forgive my crew. They were not laughing at you. They were laughing from relief." The Archon's mandibles clicked. "Relief?" "Yes. You see, we received your transmission, and at first we were very worried. We thought perhaps you were here to actually threaten us." Tai-Ho smiled warmly. "Now we understand that this is simply your way of introducing yourself. A little dramatic, perhaps, but very impressive. The Bone Throne is a nice touch." The Archon was silent for a long moment. In 800 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to his threats with, "Whatever this was, you are not afraid," the Archon said slowly. "Afraid? Of what?" Tai-Ho spread his hands. "You have only brought 400 ships. We assumed this was a diplomatic mission, a friendly visit. Surely if you meant to threaten us, you would have brought more." Junho stared at Tai-Ho. The old man was either brilliant or insane. "I have destroyed worlds with fewer ships than this," the Archon said. There was something different in his voice now. Not anger, confusion. "I'm sure those worlds were very impressed," Tai-Ho said. "But we are humans. We do things differently. For example, we would be happy to meet with you, share a meal, talk about our differences. We make excellent noodles." The Archon's eyes moved to Junho, who was still holding his chopsticks. "You eat strings? They're delicious," Junho said, surprising himself. The screen went dark. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Yuna broke the silence. "Did that work? Are we dead?" Tai-Ho sat down heavily in an empty chair. "I have no idea, but I do know one thing." He looked at the blank screen where the Archon's face had been. That alien has never been laughed at before. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to respond. "Is that good?" Junho asked. "Maybe. Or maybe he's preparing to blow us all into dust." Tai-Ho shrugged. "But I don't think so. I think we just showed him something he's never seen. A species that isn't afraid of his fancy title." 3 hours later, a response came. The Archon agreed to negotiations. He wanted to understand, and that was how humanity, armed with nothing but noodles and nervous laughter, survived first contact with the most feared empire in the galaxy. Humanity encountered the Galactic Empire and couldn't stop giggling part. 1 week after first contact, a neutral station in the asteroid belt became the most important place in human history. The station was old, built for mining operations that had ended decades ago. Now it held the fate of Earth in its rusty metal walls. Dr. Choi Minji arrived on the station 2 days before the aliens. She was a xenopsychologist, which meant she studied how alien minds might work. Of course, until last week, her job had been entirely theoretical. Now it was terrifyingly real. "Tell me everything you observed," she said to Lieutenant Yuna, who had been brought to the station as a witness. Yuna still looked embarrassed about the laughing incident. "I don't know what happened. I couldn't stop." His title was so long, and he was so serious. And those bone decorations on his throne. Bones are actually quite significant in many Earth cultures as symbols of power, Minji said, writing in her notebook. "I know. But did you see the tiny skulls hanging from his chair like Christmas ornaments?" Minji paused. "I did not notice that. There were at least 30 of them. Little skull decorations. Like a child's art project." Minji wrote this down too. Understanding the alien mind would require understanding Why they thought skulls on strings were intimidating rather than silly. The hegemony delegation arrived exactly on time. The Veltrix Archon himself did not come. That would be beneath his dignity, but he sent 12 of his highest advisors. They were all the same species as the Archon. Tall beetle-like creatures with hard shells and many eyes. They walked in perfect formation, their footsteps clicking on the metal floor. Ambassador Li Taiho greeted them with a bow. "Welcome to neutral ground. We are honored by your presence." The lead advisor, who introduced himself as First Voice Krell, did not bow back. "We are here to determine if your species is worthy of quick death or slow death. The Archon has not yet decided. How kind of him to give us options," Taiho said pleasantly. Sergeant Han Do-yoon, the security officer assigned to protect the human delegation, coughed to hide a laugh. He was a large man with a round face, and he had a bad habit of making jokes at the worst possible times. The negotiations began. The hegemony advisors explained, in great detail, how powerful their empire was. They had conquered 2,000 worlds. They had destroyed species that refused to surrender. They had weapons that could crack planets like eggs. "We have something to show you," Krell said. He activated a holographic display that showed a planet being destroyed. The planet broke apart slowly, pieces floating into space while millions of lives ended in fire and silence. The room was quiet. The message was clear. This could be Earth. Then Krell made a mistake. He showed them statistics. "As you can see from these numbers," Krell said, pointing at floating charts, "our military efficiency is ranked number 1 in the galaxy. We have a 99.7% success rate in planetary conquest." Do-yoon leaned toward Yuna. "What happened to the other 0.3%? "Sergeant," Taiho said in a warning tone, but Krell had heard. The 0.3% were planets that destroyed themselves before we could conquer them. They preferred death to submission. "So you're saying," Do-yoon continued, unable to stop himself, "that some planets would rather explode than join your empire?" The advisors clicked their mandibles in confusion. "Yes, this demonstrates how terrible we are. They feared us so much that they chose death over living under your rule." "Got it," Do-yoon nodded slowly. That's definitely something to brag about." Minji kicked him under the table, but it was too late. Several human delegates were pressing their lips together, trying not to smile. The idea that the hegemony was proudly advertising that species preferred suicide to joining them was, from a human perspective, absolutely insane. Krell noticed the strange expressions on the human faces. "You are making that face again. The one your lieutenant made during first contact. What does it mean?" Taiho stepped in quickly. "It means we are processing information. Humans make many faces when we think. Our species does not make faces," Krell said. "Faces are inefficient. We communicate through words and violence." "Just those 2 options?" Yuna asked. "What else is there?" Minji was writing furiously in her notebook. No concept of facial expressions as communication. No understanding of non-verbal emotional signals. This explains so much. "First Voice Krell," Minji said carefully. "May I ask a question about your culture?" Krell's eyes focused on her. "You may ask. I may choose not to answer." When Lieutenant Yuna made sounds during first contact, the sounds that came from her mouth, what did the Archon think those sounds meant? "We debated this for many hours," Krell admitted. "Some believed it was a threat display, like the sounds our warriors make before battle. Others believed your species had developed a psychic weapon that causes madness. The Archon now believes it was an attempt to show dominance." "It was none of those things," Minji said. "Then what was it?" Minji looked at Taiho. Taiho nodded. This was the moment. "It was laughter," Minji said. "Humans laugh when something is funny. when something surprises us in a pleasant way. When something is so strange or unexpected that our brains don't know how else to respond. Crown stared at her for a long time. I do not understand any of those words. What is funny? That's a complicated question. Is funny a weapon? No, well, sometimes. Minji struggled to explain. Funny is a feeling, an emotion. Emotions are weakness. The hegemony eliminated emotions from our species 3,000 years ago. The human delegates exchanged glances. Eliminated emotions. That explained even more. First voice Crown. Taiho said, I have a proposal. The Archon wants to understand why we laughed. We want to not be destroyed. Perhaps we can help each other. Continue. We will teach you about laughter, about humor, about why humans find certain things funny. In exchange, you agree to a ceasefire while we teach you. Crown considered this. The Archon is curious about your strange behavior. He has never encountered a species that responded to his threats with mouth sounds. He wishes to understand before he destroys you. Then we have a deal? We have a temporary agreement. Crown stood, and all the advisors stood with him. But understand this, Ambassador. If we decide that your laughter is a weapon, we will take it from you. We will learn how it works. And then we will use it to conquer more worlds. After the aliens left, Doyun let out a long breath. Did anyone else notice that they think laughter might be a weapon? They're not entirely wrong, Minji said quietly. Laughter is powerful. It breaks fear. It builds connections. It makes the powerful look foolish. So we're going to teach the galaxy's most feared empire how to laugh? Yuna asked. We're going to try, Taiho said. And maybe, just maybe, we'll survive long enough to see if it works. Outside the station, the hegemony ships waited in perfect formation, ready to destroy humanity at a single command. They did not know it yet, but they were about to face a weapon more dangerous than any they had ever encountered. They were about to learn what it meant to be laughed at. Humanity encountered the Galactic Empire and couldn't stop giggling part. 3. Professor Baek Sujin had spent 30 years studying the history of comedy. She knew everything about jokes, where they came from, why they worked, how they changed through time. She had written 12 books on the subject. She had given lectures at every major university on Earth. None of that prepared her for her new students. The hegemony sent a delegation of scholars to Earth. They arrived in Seoul, where the government had quickly converted an old cultural center into what they officially called the Humor Research Facility. The aliens walked through the doors with the serious expressions of scientists entering a dangerous laboratory. There were 5 of them. 4 were older advisors with dull shells and tired eyes. The 5th was younger, smaller, with a shell that still had some shine to it. This one was called Crix, and unlike the others, Crix actually seemed interested in being here. Welcome to Earth, Sujin said, bowing. I will be your teacher. We are not here to learn, the lead scholar said. We are here to study, to understand your psychological weapon, to take it apart and see how it works. Of course, Sujin said. Please, sit down. Captain Park Junho stood in the corner of the room, officially there for security, but mostly there because he couldn't resist watching this disaster unfold. Sujin began with the basics. Humor often comes from surprise. When something unexpected happens, humans sometimes laugh. She showed them a video. A man walked confidently toward a door, but the door didn't open. He walked into it face first and fell down. The aliens watched in silence. Did the man die? One scholar asked. No, he was fine. It was funny because he expected the door to open, but it didn't. Why is unexpected pain amusing? Sujin paused. She had never had to explain this before. It's not about the pain. It's about the surprise. And the fact that he was so confident, but then something silly happened. Confidence is valued. Silly is bad. Why would you celebrate failure? This was going to be harder than she thought. She tried another approach. Let me show you something called a pun. It's a type of joke based on words. She wrote on the board, I used to hate math, but then I realized decimals have a point. The alien stared at the board. Point has two meanings, Sujin explained. In math, a decimal point is a dot between numbers. But point also means purpose or value. So the joke is that decimals have a point, both a literal point and a purpose. Crix leaned forward. So the humor comes from one word meaning two things? Yes, exactly. That seems like poor language design. Words should have one meaning to prevent confusion. But the confusion is what makes it funny. Why would confusion be enjoyable? Sujin rubbed her forehead. Junho felt bad for her. She was trying to explain color to creatures who had never seen light. The next attempt was physical comedy. Sujin showed them classic videos of people slipping on banana peels, walking into glass doors, and falling into swimming pools. Your species is very clumsy, one scholar observed. These are staged. They're performances. Your species performs clumsiness? For entertainment? Yes. This explains why you have not achieved faster than light travel. Your focus is wrong. Junho covered his mouth to hide his smile. The aliens had accidentally made a joke, but they would never know it. Then something interesting happened. Sujin, running out of ideas, decided to show them internet videos. These are very popular on Earth, she said. Millions of humans watch these every day. The first video was of a cat. The cat sat on a table. A cucumber was placed behind it. The cat turned, saw the cucumber, and jumped 3 feet in the air, terrified. 4 of the scholars showed no reaction. But Crix young, curious Crix made a small sound. Everyone turned to look. What was that? Crix asked, touching their throat. Something happened inside me when the small creature jumped. A strange feeling. That might be the beginning of amusement, Sujin said carefully. Would you like to see more? Yes. Show me more of the small creatures. Sujin showed more cat videos. Cats falling off things. Cats being scared by their own reflections. Cats sitting in boxes too small for them. Krix watched each one with growing intensity. The other scholars looked uncomfortable. What is this creature called? Crix asked. A cat. Why does it sit in boxes too small for its body? Nobody knows. Cats just like boxes. That is. Crix paused, searching for words. That is very strange. Yes, I want to see a cat. A real one. The other scholars protested. This was not part of their mission. They were here to study weapons, not small furry animals. But Crix insisted, and since Crix was the youngest child of a very important hegemony family, the others had to allow it. A cat was brought in. It was orange, fat, and completely unimpressed by the aliens. Crix bent down to look at it. The cat looked back. Then, with perfect cat logic, it walked over to an empty box in the corner of the room and sat inside it. Crix made the sound again. Louder this time. I feel something, Crix said. In my chest. What is happening to me? I think, Sujin said gently, you might be experiencing joy. The other scholars backed away from Crix, as if joy might be contagious. But the real breakthrough came later that day, when Sujin showed them something different. She showed them videos of human leaders making mistakes. Presidents tripping. Kings saying stupid things. Generals making fools of themselves. You record your leaders' failures? A scholar asked. We share them. Everyone watches. Everyone laughs. And your leaders permit this? They can't stop it. And if they tried, we would laugh even harder. The scholars looked at each other. This was beyond their understanding. In the hegemony, mocking a leader meant death. The idea that humans freely made fun of their own powerful figures was revolutionary. Crix asked the question that would change everything. Your leaders know that people laugh at them. What do they do? Sujin smiled. That's the beautiful part. They have to pretend to laugh along. If they get angry, if they try to punish people for laughing, they look weak. They look like they can't take a joke. So they smile and pretend it doesn't bother them. So, laughter. Crick said slowly, working through the idea. Laughter takes power away from the powerful? Sometimes, yes. Crix was quiet for a long time. The other scholars were ready to return to their ship, but Crix stood still, thinking about cats and boxes and leaders who had to pretend that being mocked didn't hurt. That night, Crix requested all available videos of powerful figures being embarrassed. The request was noted but not reported. Nobody realized that they had just planted a seed. Nobody knew that Crix would water that seed with videos and jokes and cat pictures until it grew into something that would shake the entire Galaxy.Krix had learned something that the hegemony had tried to destroy 3,000 years ago. Crix had learned to laugh at the powerful, and Crix was already thinking about who else needed to learn. Humanity encountered the Galactic Empire and couldn't stop giggling. Part 4-6. Months after the scholars returned to hegemony space, Commander Shin Yoonji sat in a small office on Earth's moonbase, staring at reports that made no sense. Yoonji was an intelligence officer. Her job was to watch the hegemony, to track their ships, to predict their attacks. For 6 months, she had expected the invasion to begin at any moment. The aliens had 400 warships. Earth had almost nothing. The math was simple, but the invasion never came. Instead, something strange was happening. Play the transmission again, she told her. Assistant. The screen showed a hegemony world called Morex 7. It was a planet of workers, millions of small gray creatures who had been conquered 200 years ago and forced to work in hegemony factories. In the video, a group of Vorik workers stood in front of a government building. They were holding signs. The sign showed a picture of the Veltrix Archon wearing a tiny decorative hat. What is that supposed to be? The assistant asked. I think it's a joke, Yoonji said. Someone added a funny hat to the Archon's picture. And they're protesting with it? It looks that way. The hegemony guards in the video seemed confused. They had been trained to handle violence, resistance, weapons. They had no idea what to do about a picture of their supreme leader wearing a silly hat. More reports came in. On another world, workers had started making a sound during their shifts. A strange sound, like air escaping from their bodies. It happened whenever a supervisor walked by. The supervisors had tried to punish them, but the sound just spread to more workers. They're laughing, Yoonji realized. They're laughing at their bosses. How is that possible? The hegemony eliminated humor from conquered species. You can eliminate the word. You can eliminate the teaching. But you can't eliminate the feeling. Yoonji leaned back in her chair. Somehow, these species are rediscovering it. The answer came a week later, when Yoonji's team intercepted a data stream being broadcast across hegemony space. It was disguised as normal communication, hidden inside shipping reports and factory schedules. But when they decoded it, they found something incredible. It was humor. Human humor, translated into hundreds of alien languages. Cat videos with captions. Compilations of hegemony officials looking foolish. Simple jokes about life under the empire. And at the end of every transmission, a message. You are not alone. Laughter is freedom. Pass it on. The transmissions were coming from somewhere deep in hegemony space. Yunji traced them for weeks before she found the source. A small ship moving constantly between systems, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. The ship was registered to a Gemini scholar named Crix. The kid with the cat obsession, Yunji muttered, remembering the reports from the Seoul facility. I'll be damned. She requested a meeting with Ambassador Lee Taiho. When she showed him the evidence, the old diplomat smiled his usual calm smile. So the scholar we taught is now teaching others, Taiho said. I suppose that's what teachers hope for. Ambassador, the hegemony is going to blame us for this. They'll say we started a rebellion. Did we? We showed them cat videos, and they chose what to do with that knowledge. Taiho looked at the decoded transmissions. We can't control how species use what they learn. We just gave them information. They decided it was worth fighting for. Meanwhile, in hegemony space, Crix had become the most wanted criminal in 1,000 systems. The revolution had started small. A joke here. A funny picture there. Workers sharing secret smiles when guards weren't looking. But small things grow. A spark becomes a fire. On Varak 7, the workers refused to bow to hegemony flags. When guards demanded they show respect, the workers made the laughing sound. Not loud, not aggressive, just a sound. A reminder that the guards were being silly for demanding bows to colored cloth. The guards didn't know how to respond. Violence against laughing workers just made more workers laugh. Threats didn't work because the workers weren't scared anymore. How could they be scared of leaders they now found ridiculous? On another world, someone posted a video of a hegemony admiral slipping on a wet floor. The video spread to 1 billion screens in one day. The admiral demanded it be removed. His demand was turned into another joke. More people laughed. Crix traveled from system to system, meeting with underground groups, teaching them what the humans had taught. The cat videos were popular, but the most powerful tool was simpler. The idea that the powerful could be mocked. They want you to fear them. Crix told a secret gathering on a mining colony. Fear's their only weapon. But fear cannot survive laughter. When you laugh at them, you take their power away. A young worker raised their hand. But they can still kill us. They can kill some of us. But they cannot kill an idea. They cannot kill joy. And every time they punish someone for laughing, 10 more start laughing in secret. The Veltrix Archon responded the only way he knew how, with violence. He sent warships to crush rebellions. He ordered mass arrests. He banned all communications between worlds. None of it worked. The harder he pushed, the more ridiculous he looked. His angry speeches were edited with funny sound effects and shared across the galaxy. His threats became jokes. His titles, once spoken with fear, were now repeated in mocking tones by children on 100 worlds. 12 planets declared independence from the hegemony. Their revolutionary flag was a simple image. The Archon's face with a tiny crown drawn on his head at a silly angle. On Earth, Lieutenant Yuna watched the news in amazement. Her single nervous laugh during first contact had somehow led to this. An empire was crumbling because she couldn't keep a straight face. Do you feel responsible? Captain Junho asked her. I don't know. I just laughed. I didn't mean to start a revolution. Maybe that's how all revolutions start. Someone refuses to be afraid. Someone laughs when they're supposed to bow. Ambassador Taiho was called before the United Earth Council to explain the situation. The hegemony had sent an angry message blaming humanity for the chaos in their empire. They demanded that Earth surrender the weapon they had used. We have no weapon, Taiho told the council. We just answered a question. They asked what laughter was. We showed them. And now their empire is falling apart, a council member said. Their empire was held together by fear. We showed their subjects that fear was optional. They might still attack us. Taiho nodded. They might, but I don't think they will. They're too busy fighting their own people. And more importantly, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I think the Archon is starting to understand what he's really up against. And what is that? Joy, Taiho said simply. He's fighting against joy. And in that war, he's already lost. Far away, in the darkness of space, Crix received a message from the Archon himself. It offered forgiveness, wealth, power, anything, if Crix would just stop. Crix read the message and smiled. It was not a human smile. Crix's species didn't have the face for it, but it was a smile in spirit. Then Crix wrote back a single line. Send me a picture of yourself in a funny hat, and we'll talk. The Archon's response was silence. The revolution continued. Humanity encountered the Galactic Empire and couldn't stop giggling. Part 5. 1 year after first contact, the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. The galactic hegemony of 12 stars no longer existed. In its place were 200 independent systems, free for the first time in centuries. Some had formed the Free Worlds Coalition. Others had chosen to stand alone. All of them had one thing in common. They had learned to laugh. The ceremony for the new coalition was held on a neutral station, the same station where humanity had first negotiated with the hegemony. Dr. Choi Minji stood in the crowd. Watching history happen, Crix stood at the podium. The young scholar had become Premier Crix now, chosen by the Free Worlds to lead their new government. It was strange to see someone who had once come to Earth to study psychological weapons, now speaking about freedom and hope. For 3,000 years, Crix said, the hegemony told us that emotions were weakness. They removed laughter from our cultures. They made us afraid to smile. They taught us that joy was dangerous. The crowd listened in silence. They were right, Crix continued. Joy is dangerous. Laughter is dangerous. Humor is the most dangerous weapon in the universe. Because you cannot rule people who are not afraid of you. You cannot control people who think you are ridiculous. Somewhere in the crowd, Captain Park Junho smiled. He had traveled a long way to see this moment. Beside him stood Lieutenant Yuna, Ambassador Taiho, Professor Baek Sujin, and Sergeant Han Do-hyun, all the humans who have been part of First Contact. I want to thank the humans, Crix said, looking toward them. They did not give us weapons. They did not fight our battles. They simply showed us that fear was a choice. They laughed when they should have trembled. And that one laugh changed everything. Crix paused, and something changed in their posture. The formal speech was over. Now came something more personal. I want to tell you all a joke, Crix said. The crowd murmured. This was not expected. I learned this joke from the humans. I have practiced it many times. I am told my delivery is... Crix looked at Sujin, who had helped with preparation. Not good. Sujin nodded encouragingly. Here's the joke. Why did the hegemony fleet cross the galaxy? Silence. To get to the other side. But they forgot to ask for directions because they were too proud. The joke was terrible. The setup was clumsy. The punchline made no sense. It was exactly the kind of joke a being who had only recently learned what humor was might tell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then someone in the crowd made a sound. A small, awkward laugh. Then another. Then more. Not because the joke was funny, but because the situation was beautiful. Here was a leader, once part of an empire built on fear, telling a bad joke to thousands of beings who had never been allowed to laugh. The laughter spread. It grew. Soon the whole station was filled with the sound of 200 species laughing together. Crix watched them with wonder. I finally understand, Crix said, voice full of emotion. The joke does not have to be good. What matters is that we laugh together. Far away from the celebration, on a small planet at the edge of known space, the former Veltrix Archon sat in exile. He had lost everything. His empire, his power, his titles that once took 11 minutes to recite. Now he was just an old insectoid sitting in a simple room, watching the news from systems he used to rule. The screen showed the celebration. It showed cricks telling their bad joke. It showed thousands of beings laughing. The Archon had watched this kind of footage many times in the past year. At first, he had watched with anger, then with confusion. Now he watched with something he didn't have a name for. His mandibles twitched. He didn't know why. He wasn't happy. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't anything he recognized. Just his mandibles twitched when he saw cricks fail at telling a joke and everyone laugh anyway. He turned off the screen and sat in the dark. Back on Earth, Dr. Minji finally published her research paper. She had been working on it for the entire year, documenting everything that had happened. The title was On the Weaponization of Joy: How Humanity Defeated an Empire by Refusing to Take It Seriously. It's a bit dramatic, Junho said when he read it. It's accurate, Minji replied. We didn't fire a single shot. We didn't build any weapons. We just laughed and everything changed. Do you think it will last? The coalition, the free worlds, all of it? Minji considered the question. I don't know. Freedom is hard. Building a new society is harder. Some of these species haven't governed themselves in centuries. But they can laugh now. Yes, and that means they can question. They can mock. They can refuse to take their new leaders too seriously either. Minji smiled. That's the thing about humor. Once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. And it works on everyone, not just enemies. The United Earth Council offered humanity leadership of the new Galactic Coalition. Ambassador Taiho politely refused. We're not meant to lead, he told the confused coalition representatives. We're more like the weird cousin who shows up to family gatherings uninvited and teaches everyone bad jokes. We do not understand this comparison, a representative said. That's fine. You will eventually. Lieutenant Kim Yuna became famous across 12 star systems as the first giggler. Songs were written about her. Statues were proposed, though she refused them. She still got nervous in important situations. She still laughed at inappropriate times. Do you regret it? A reporter asked her during an interview. The laugh that started everything? Yuna thought about it. She remembered the terror of seeing 400 warships. She remembered the Archon's serious face, his long title, his throne decorated with tiny skulls. She remembered trying to hold it in, failing, and then laughing so hard she cried. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. I was scared. I was nervous. I was looking at the end of my world. And something inside me decided that if I was going to die, I wasn't going to die being afraid of someone called He Who Makes Stars Weep. The reporter nodded. So it was bravery? No, it was just human. We laugh when things don't make sense. We laugh when we're scared. We laugh when the universe is too big and too scary and too serious. Yuna smiled. Maybe that's our greatest strength. We refuse to take things as seriously as they want to be taken. Years later, historians would debate exactly how a single laugh had changed the galaxy. They would write books about strategy, about cultural transmission, about the psychology of fear and freedom. They would create complex theories about why the hegemony fell. But the beings who had lived through it knew the truth was simpler. The hegemony ruled through fear. Humanity responded with laughter. And in that single moment of refusing to be afraid, they showed the entire galaxy that the most powerful empire in existence had no power over a species that couldn't stop giggling. On the first anniversary of the Free Worlds Coalition, a message was broadcast to every system in the galaxy. It showed a video, millions of beings on hundreds of worlds, all making the sound that had once been forbidden. Laughter. Real. Joyful, free laughter. And somewhere on a small exile planet, an old Archon watched the broadcast. His mandibles twitched again. He still didn't know what the feeling was, but for the first time in 800 years, he didn't try to stop it. The galaxy had learned to laugh, and nothing would ever be the same.